Hello, I'm John Southard, an historian and Friends of Pueblo Grande Museum board member. I'll be providing a brief, visually engaging primer on the early history of present-day Phoenix. Phoenix, a city over 500 square miles in size that is home to approximately 1.7 million residents, nearly 5 million in the metropolitan area colloquially known as the Valley of the Sun, should not, at first glance at least, exist. The stunning, although harsh, Sonoran Desert can be very inhospitable. Today, desert dwellers can recreate at one of the many large reservoirs located in close proximity to population centers, relax in well-insulated, climate-conditioned homes, commute in air-conditioned cars, buses, or light rail trains, and access all the potable water one would ever need by turning on a tap. However, the entire state of Arizona boasts only two natural lakes, Mormon Lake and Stoneman Lake, both of which are far removed from the valley. How is it, then, that Phoenix and its neighboring communities came to be the economic, political, and population center of the state? Certainly, the ongoing growth boom dating back to the immediate post-World War II period has been aided by myriad factors, to include effective boosterism, the advent of affordable and effective climate control technology, mass production tract housing, seemingly endless amounts of land for low-density, single-family residential development, Arizona State College's transition to Arizona State University, and, thanks to the tireless efforts of Senator Carl Hayden and many others, the importation of Colorado River water from over 300 miles away via the Central Arizona Project, or CAP. Phoenix sits in the lower Salt River Valley, between the convergence of the Salt and Verde Rivers to the northeast and the convergence of the Salt and Gila Rivers to the southwest. The Phoenix area, located at the northern reach of the Sonoran Desert, is an arid region. The 100th meridian, a north-south line roughly bisecting the continental United States, is often used to reference the differing annual rainfall totals of the eastern United States and its more arid western environs. The white area in parts of Arizona, California, Idaho, Nevada, New Mexico, and Utah denotes the driest region of the arid West, generally averaging 10 inches of rain or less per annum. Phoenix and its neighboring communities fall within this zone, averaging around 8 inches of rain each year, most of it falling during summer monsoons and winter storms. Lacking heavy and consistent rainfall, valley residents, both prehistorically and historically, relied principally on the Salt River, once a perennial river with seasonably variable streamflow levels, for their water supply. Although considered lush when compared to other deserts, the Sonoran Desert likely appeared desolate to those passing through from other regions. The scrubby brush, absence of old-growth forests, and the presence of visually unique plants such as the ocotillo and palo verde undoubtedly left Easterners both awestruck and perplexed. The sea of multi-armed saguaros of great height, girth, and age present in the valley in the mid to late 19th century would have been a magnificent sight indeed. This idyllic view of Sonoran Desert flora with Camelback Mountain in the background, and many other similar landscapes, while striking, likely dissuaded many Easterners from even attempting to cultivate what many would consider a barren wasteland. But looks can be deceiving. While lacking significant rainfall, the valley does possess good soil and a river capable of irrigating vast expanses of cropland. This map of Township 1 North, Range 3 East, an area bounded on the north by McDowell Road, on the south by Baseline Road, and 40th Street and 19th Avenue to the east and west, respectively, was prepared by the General Land Office in 1868. The area within the red rectangle, identified as the Phoenix Settlement, is the location of the earliest permanent Euro-American presence in modern-day Phoenix. The Anglos of the Phoenix settlement, however, were well aware of the fact that they were not the first occupants of the area. Prehistoric architecture and infrastructure was still clearly present on the landscape. Pueblo Grande, represented by this interpretation, dominated the landscape east of the Phoenix settlement. On this map, Pueblo Grande is identified as, quote, ruins of an adobe house surrounded by a wall, end quote. For reference, the mini-stack, a popular name for the interchange of Interstate 10 and State Routes 51 and 202, is located near the top left of this rectangle. What we know as the city center, downtown Phoenix, is located west of the rectangle. Central and Washington, the heart of our modern street grid and addressing system, is located in the center of Section 8. John Smith, the settler for Fort McDowell, located on the Verde River northeast of present-day Fountain Hills, was the first Euro-American to commercially exploit the agricultural value of the Salt River Valley. Smith, later to become known as John Y.T., or yours truly, Smith, was not, however, an agriculturalist. Smith's initial efforts were limited to collecting wild vegetation growing along the riverbanks, which he then sold to feed horses at Fort McDowell. Around the time Smith was active on the North Bank, Tucson merchant and freighter Charles Hayden, a Connecticut transplant, noted the potential of the south side of the river, particularly a hard-bottomed river crossing that would soon be known as Hayden's Ferry and is now known as Tempe. John Jack Swilling was another gentleman, and the use of that term is being generous, who was eyeing the potential of the Salt River Valley. Swilling, a troubled soul who would later die at the Yuma Territorial Prison while being held for a stagecoach robbery he did not commit, is credited with recognizing the extensive prehistoric canal system present in the valley for what it is, and subsequently setting about to revive that ancient network of waterways. And extensive it was. This 1929 map of prehistoric canals, drawn by Omar Turney, documents the reach of the gravity-fed prehistoric canal network of the ancestral Autumn, constructed during a time referred to as the Hohokam cultural sequence. For reference, the rectangle placed over the area of the Phoenix settlement on the 1868 General Land Office map is overlaid here on Turney's canal map. The accomplishments of the ancestral Autumn, represented here by the previously displayed artistic rendering of Pueblo Grande as it stood in prehistoric times, and here by a photograph of an excavated prehistoric canal bed, are numerous and incredible. The Autumn of the Ak-Chin Indian Community, Gila River Indian Community, Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, and Tohono O'odham Nation are direct lineal descendants of the ancestral Autumn and have lived in the Salt River Valley, Gila River Valley, and beyond since time immemorial. While this presentation focuses on the Euro-American settlement and development of the Salt River Valley, it is crucial to acknowledge the fact that the protagonists of this story were provided a template by the ancestral Autumn and, in many cases, directly aided by their descendants. It was clear to Swilling, Hayden, and others that the Salt River had once sustained a large population through irrigation. Salt, shown here in what may be a more accurate depiction of its typical pre-dam appearance, would now be called upon to do so once more. Irrigation canals drawing water from the salt, almost all of which were initially reuses of the engineering marvels of the ancestral Autumn, soon brought water and life to the fields of a small but growing group of Euro-American agriculturalists, who then recruited others to farm their newfound oasis in the desert. The resulting success, as demonstrated by this series of postcard images, was a boosterist's dream. Seemingly anything could be grown, and grown well, in the Salt River Valley. Endless varieties of crops were grown, to include wheat, Irrigated crops yielding harvest piles as far as the eye can see. Here is alfalfa, harvested thrice annually. And, of course, consumers of the aforementioned alfalfa. In addition to cattle, livestock included sheep, chickens, turkeys, and ostriches. Yes, you heard me right, ostriches, which produced both luxuriant feathers and large eggs. Figs? You betcha. Pears? Absolutely. And grapes. They grew a bunch. Get it? Dates, a delicacy exported across the continent. Sugar? You want cane or beet? They had both types. Cotton? Some of the finest in the world, and lots of it. And, of course, citrus. Citrus groves abounded. It should be noted that the life of early Phoenicians was not easy. In this image, a very modest home is shaded by a ramada, a structure type of autumn design. The woman in this image, resting comfortably while reading a book, is likely intended to demonstrate success, a triumph over the desert environment. This woman may be one of those early Phoenicians who, as described in Patrick Hamilton's 1883 book, The Resources of Arizona, quote, battled bravely against obstacles which would have discouraged less determined men. But they held on, and the fruits of their toils and privations is seen today in the beautiful valley, which will ever remain a monument to their enterprise and foresight. End quote. Indeed, by the mid-1880s, many of the buildings in the valley were built of adobe, a time-tested, climate-appropriate material. Building material preferences would change with the coming of the railroad in 1887. Brick became the aspirational building material. Although the fruits of their toils and privations were evident in their lush fields, stores stocked with consumer goods brought in by train, and more durable buildings, early Phoenicians would yet again have to battle bravely against obstacles. The Salt River, the source of their prosperity, sometimes cruelly reversed their fortunes, as was the case with the catastrophic 1891 Salt River flood. The flood, a calamitous event that brought about widespread devastation, demonstrated the power of the waterway and underscored the need to check its stream flow variability and destructive potential. The Arizona Republican, now known as the Arizona Republic, did find some silver linings amongst the stories of ruin. The flood did, after all, drown, quote, every gopher, rabbit, and species of vermin, end quote, present on flooded ranches. And, no doubt to the delight of many who viewed adobe buildings as unrefined and, quote, un-American, end quote, but much to the chagrin of modern preservationists, the flood resulted in the, quote, washing down of adobe houses, end quote, as celebrated in this February 24th, 1891 Arizona Republican article, which proclaimed a hope that the flood would, quote, relieve the valley forever of the dreadful mud house, end quote. The staff at the Republican made their distaste for adobe clear with an article published just 3 days prior, reporting that, quote, several worthless adobe houses were melted down, end quote, in Tempe. While the flood served as a powerful reminder of the river's fickleness, Phoenicians optimistically embraced the future. Maricopa County had been created from Yavapai County in 1871. In 1885, the territorial legislature voted to allocate $100,000 for the construction of a psychiatric hospital in Phoenix. a facility still in operation at the northeast corner of 24th Street and Van Buren. That same session, the legislature allocated funding for a teacher's training school in Tempe, an institution now known as Arizona State University. In 1887, as previously mentioned, Phoenix received rail service. In 1889, the city became the new territorial capital. In 1901, a capitol building befitting a state, not a territory, was completed in Phoenix. The following year, the federal Newlands Reclamation Act created funding for large-scale irrigation projects in the American West. This legislation facilitated construction of the Theodore Roosevelt Dam on the Salt River, the first of many such dams to be erected along the Salt. The Roosevelt Dam, which was completed in 1911, ensured a reliable water supply and generated electricity to boot. The dream of early Euro-American agriculturalists had been realized. A reservoir managed the water supply, liberating Phoenicians, to some degree, from issues associated with an undependable water supply. The cactus-strewn landscape south of Camelback, shown here, as well as earlier in the presentation, had been transformed. Saguaros, ocotillo, and agave had been replaced by verdant crop fields and sprawling green pastures. Aside from the occasional butte rising from the valley floor, the Phoenix area under irrigation, as depicted in this postcard, could stand in for the Midwest or California's Central Valley. Phoenix, true to its name, had arisen anew, using the template provided by the incredibly advanced infrastructure put in place centuries ago. Boosterists, always prolific in output, went about their work with a newfound zeal. Phoenix, the city of progress, boasts the pamphlet bearing a photo of the Phoenix Union High School. Phoenix, summer days all winter, proclaims the brochure bewilderingly featuring a child emerging from a basket. Oh, to have Phoenix winter days all summer. Phoenix, where winter never comes, touts the booklet depicting folks engaging in a variety of leisure activities while surrounded by palms. Phoenix, the city of sunshine, palms, and roses. 3 varieties of palms, plants often viewed as exotic and beautiful by many in colder climes. Phoenix and the Valley of the Sun, agricultural fields, cacti, and palms. Neighboring cities also participated in boosterism. Here we have Tempe, in the heart of the Salt River Valley, showing Roosevelt Dam, agricultural fields, and fan palms. It seems that despite the majestic and diverse Sonoran desert plant palette, early valley residents felt an inexplicable affection for non-native fan palms. Mesa, similar imagery, sans palms. The promotional efforts of Valley Boosters did not feature agriculture alone. By the turn of the 20th century, Phoenix had a built environment worthy of celebration. The Hotel Adams, a grand replacement of its predecessor that was lost to fire. This building was subsequently replaced by yet another hotel, which still stands. The Jefferson Hotel, now known as the Barrister Building, but perhaps best known for its inclusion in the film Psycho. A view of the Lures Building, as seen from the balcony of the Adams Hotel. The Lures Building stands on the right side of Central Avenue, on the far end of the image. This image depicts the Lures Building prior to the construction of the Lures Tower to its west. Phoenix's 1923 Union Station, erected in advance of Phoenix's 1926 inclusion on the main line. Although not in use as a railroad facility, it still stands. The Security Building, another 1920s project that remains in use today, as does the Hotel San Carlos, which is also shown. The Lesher and Mahoney designed Orpheum Theater, a landmark in the 1920s and today. The Pueblo Deco-style Luers Tower, both this and the Luers Building, seen in this image and as shown from the Adams balcony just moments ago, still stand. The Westward Ho in its pre-broadcast tower days. Photos of the Westward Ho, a beautiful 1920s building with a spectacular interior, still standing, still spectacular. Finally, Sky Harbor Airport, another survivor of the 20s, still in use today, although much, much larger and under different ownership. Sky Harbor brings us full circle. The airport sits, partially, in sections 10, 11, and 12 of Township 1 North, Range 3 East. Those of you playing along at home will recall that these sections are just west of Pueblo Grande and sit within the red rectangle encompassing the Phoenix settlement on the 1868 General Land Office map. Land along the Salt, put to yet another use, further expanding the valley's economy. I hope this presentation has proved both educational and engaging. While we covered a fair amount of ground, this presentation alone cannot and does not adequately chronicle the first decades of the city's development, or those that follow. For those of you wishing to learn more about Phoenix's century and a half of development, I recommend reading Desert Visions and the Making of Phoenix, 1860 to 2009, by Dr. Philip Vandermeer, or Phoenix in Perspective, Reflections on Developing the Desert, by Grady Gamage Jr. Gamage, an author who is, in the words of one critic, quote, uniquely positioned to tell us how a thirsty, western giant like Phoenix can become a resilient metropolis in the ever hotter and drier years to come, end quote, also wrote, The Future of the Suburban City, Lessons from Sustaining Phoenix. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your support of the Pueblo Grande Museum.